Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Productions TV. My name is Ashley Robinson. I'm a spiritualist medium from South London, and it's a great pleasure to host tonight's show, Being Spiritual with Ashley Robinson. I'd like to welcome my special guest, my good friend and fellow medium, Mr. Ian Mason. Welcome this evening,
Thank
sir.
you, Ash. Good evening, everyone.
And my friend and mentor in many ways, Bagita Vista. Thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me, Ash.
And tonight's run of shows continues with the sort of the dominoes of spiritual philosophy we've started to line out. At the beginning of the concepts of these run of shows, we had the opportunity to talk about energy and the meaning of God, the all being, the divine, the energy behind the universe. We've also spoken about our spiritual inspirers and our guides, our guardian angels. And then at the last show, we introduced the concept of reincarnation. And what we're going to talk about tonight is probably one of the more controversial aspects of the concept of reincarnation, and that's the additional concept of karma. And plan is that I will give you my belief as it's been laid out to me by teachers both on earth and in spirits, my guides and inspirers. I'm going to quote from one of my favourite books and favourite teachers, Mr. Ralph A. Steadman. And we're going to then open it up, and Bagita and Ian are going to give you their taste and flavour of exactly this thing. And we're going to open it up to your questions, and your questions can be anything we've said during the show. It can be about challenging us or agreeing with us. And you can ask us pretty much anything spiritual. Then between the panel over the next 90 minutes, we look forward to answering that. I am really pleased to be here. It's been a really interesting day for me at home and in my professional work. And I've been really looking forward to this show. So thank you for joining us. Please do like it on YouTube, subscribe to Spiritual Productions TV. If you're on Facebook, please remember to bookmark Spiritual Productions TV main page, where all the shows are broadcast live. If you are hosting a watch party, thank you very much for hosting the watch party. But if you are now watching this stream from a watch party, please remember that if you engage inside that watch party, only your friends inside the watch party can see your comments. So please think about coming direct to the channel if you want to engage with me or any member of the panel later. I'm really grateful for Richard, Spiritual Productions, for hosting this this evening and giving us the opportunity to do this. But before we get going, it'd be lovely to know who is with us tonight. And if you can let us know where you're watching the show from, that was always quite interesting to me. And we will do a couple of hellos, and then we'll get into the main part of the show. So Mary Dixie, one of my previous circle leaders, good evening to you, Mary. Terry says hello and good evening to everyone. Hi, Terry. Mary Gardner, thank you for joining us, Mary. Jeanette, hello, Jeanette. Tita Ward, hello there. Julie Caswell, good evening. Martin Hazel, good evening to you, Martin. Thank you for joining us. Jeanette says hello to everybody. Good evening, welcome. Karen Goddard, my friend and colleague, looking forward to joining this. Great. Hi there, Donna, welcome. And a warm welcome to everyone else that's joining us, wherever that may be. Remember, of course, you can host watch parties after this at different times as part of the restream. Tina says hello and good evening as well. We'll allow a couple of those comments to come in now on auto. Each of us have our own Facebook homepages, which you can find us at. You can see my tag there at Ash Robinson Medium, both on Instagram and Facebook. You can find my pages. Please do consider liking those and checking out all the different bits and pieces we're doing. It's pretty great to be part of the sort of Spiritual Productions TV family. And we do try and share different appropriate things across the channels. But bookmark Spiritual Productions TV. Do visit me at Ash Robinson Medium. And thank you for those of you that are sharing the streams. One of the things we really want to do is keep this free, keep this resource, which has now reached thousands and thousands of people. Richard, you'll have to remind me, was it coming up to 500,000 different people now. This is over 650,000 viewers. Incredible. And over 2 million people now engage with the page, which is incredible. So to keep this platform free, to keep this foundation. Hello there, Sita from Louisiana. Great, we got the Americans timing right tonight, so they can join us. But do like and share the page. That costs nothing but your time. Tell people about it. Build a big family of like-minded people to get together. And if you're really interested, you could sign up to be one of Spiritual Productions VIPs, very important patrons. You can donate $1 a month to be a member of that and have access to exclusive shows and insights and behind-the-scenes bits and pieces, which Richard does. George Woods says, good evening. Hi, George. Great that you're joining us as well. Okay, so Ash has an echo. That's my good wife from downstairs. Maybe she can actually hear me from downstairs, or she can hear me on here. But hopefully there's not too much of an echo, folks, and it's all coming across okay. Right, karma. What's it all about? Well, we introduced the subject of reincarnation, and moving on from that slightly, we're going to make a couple of assumptions for the start of this chat. So we assumed that reincarnation was impossible, and indeed at the last show we went through if it was possible, what it may or may look like. With karma, we're going to assume that reincarnation does exist. And we're going to assume that people will make an incarnation or a reincarnation, may have had previous incarnations, probably have had previous incarnations leading up to the one they're living now. Now, when we spoke about reincarnation, we spoke about the fact that, my belief was that you have to live this life till its fullest. You have to be the best possible version of yourself, because you only get one opportunity and one chance at this life. And it's really important that you experience everything. You experience everything in the pursuit of happiness. You do things that make you happy with people that make you happy. And I stand by that as one of the core assumptions of this. But what I'm going to do is to throw a spanner into the works and say, what if you can't experience absolutely everything in one life? And to do that, I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine. And this friend of mine we shall call Newman. Newman is the new human. Now let's assume that the higher self version of Newman is back home in heaven, that place I call heaven, the afterlife, the spirit world, whatever you will call it. And Newman decides that they're going to incarnate on Earth, perhaps for the first time, perhaps to come back. And let's assume that Newman and his higher self have an ability to look back at the previous incarnations, to look at the things they've experienced, to look at the things they've done, the people they've loved and lost, the experiences they've done. But let's think just for a moment, what if there were only just a couple of choices? What if Newman had to decide between a couple of things? He had to decide if he was going to be a man or a woman, or in 2020, any of the other ways that people can identify themselves. What if that was one of the choices? What if Newman could choose on which part of Earth he was going to be born? And think about all the different variations of that. And Newman was going to decide if he was going to be born into a family with lots of money, or a family with hardly any money, or a family in between. What if he was going to be born into a really strong and healthy womb and be a strong fetus? What if he wanted to experience, or they wanted to experience, being born in quite a fragile pregnancy? Just thinking about those small choices and how many different versions it would be to come in. Forgetting the fact that you could decide to come back with hair like mine or no hair like Ian's. Thinking that you could come back and decide that you're going to wear glasses or not wear glasses. Just imagine doing that with all the different variations of flavor that human life could bring. So you decide you're going to be a man, but you're going to be a man and you're going to be tall. And then you want to come back as a man that's short. And then you decide you want to be a woman that was short. And then you wanted to come back and have another go and say, I want to be a woman that was tall. Imagining all those different combinations and throwing that into the assumption that you're doing it only just to experience everything. Well, that's one element of it. And what I'm going to throw on top of that is this concept of karma. And to do that, I just want to introduce a paragraph from my friend and mentor's book, the late and great Mr. Ralph A. Steadman. So the paragraph I'm going to quote is from this book here. It's called a Practical Spiritual Primer by Ralph A. Steadman. And I'm just going to read a paragraph to you, which I think is quite nice. So Ralph, I've also mentioned to a few of you before, continues to guide me from Spirit World. And what Ralph and I used to describe as his executive committee of people that would guide him. I believe that they guide me through Ralph as a chair. And what Ralph says in his book, in one of the bits about reincarnation, is that as far as we're all concerned at the moment, studying the implications for human beings, we assume that we are here to learn everything about what it means to be human. So that's the other assumption that we're going to make for this part of the show. So before the end of our personal journey, we have to experience everything that a human being possibly can. And at the end of that journey, we have become a completely balanced person. We can liken this journey to walking down the road. In the middle of the road, there is a white line, the ideal. If we walk to the left or the right of that line, we have this invisible piece of elastic tied to us, which pulls us back onto the middle line. What we could call the straight and narrow. And the further we move away from the line, the stronger the pull. A very good analogy is that of the pendulum, because the further it goes in one direction, the higher it rises, and the greater the force pulling it down back becomes, until eventually that force is so great that it overcomes the force pushing it, and the pendulum starts to move down again and in the opposite direction. The only difference between our journey and the pendulum is that of the latter is on a continuous swing, whereas our life consists of a greater number of small instants, each of which has its own energy. But what if the force is pulling us back towards the balance? The elastic pulling us back onto our own white line. What would we call this? We could give it the name karma. Karma is an ancient word from the holy language of Hinduism, one of the oldest religions in the world. Karma actually means action, word or deed, but over the centuries it's come to mean fate, kismet or destiny. Or what have we stored up for ourselves? We call it the law of karma, but it's actually not a separate law, only a special example of the main law of creation, the law of cause and effect. Every cause has an effect, and every effect has in a previous case. I'm going to stop there at the book, and you can do your own research. But going back to our friend Newman, let's imagine that the entity, the being of Newman, free of the physical shell of the vessel, the body, as they've gone through that change we experience and call death on earth. They arrive back in heaven, they look back at their life. And as a spiritualist, we understand this sense of personal responsibility. We understand the fact that we can show unconditional love through things like service and doing things for others. By taking that personal responsibility and understand that cause effect, as a good spiritualist, I like to believe that I try and get it all in balance. But we explored in my last chat that I don't think it's necessarily possible that A, you can't experience everything in that incarnation, or B, that you have to, or that you have to sort it out or resolve it. And it may only be as you get to the end of your life and you go through that change we call death, that you're in a position to be able to judge yourself. And I believe that when you get to heaven, the only true judge will be that of your higher self. And as you look at your life, you look at what your spirit being has picked up. Now, I always think about this like the alloy wheels of my car. As I go through a journey, it picks up all of the muck of life, the brake dust and the dirt and grime, the rain, the snow, the mud, and all the different things I've experienced. All of that starts to show on my tyres. And after a while, the tyres can get to a point where they need a bit of TLC. And I can take them in, I can have the alloy wheels cleaned up, I can have them polished. And I want to introduce that sense of karma and my wheels in the same way that me and my life, I go through in an incarnation and I pick up these things. And to just focus on two simple words, which won't really go as far as to explain this, but negative karma and positive karma, or negative energy and positive energy. All the things I've done that my higher self and I are able to go back and look and say, you know what, I'm not really happy about that time I raised my voice, or I was selfish, or I was a bit of a bully, or I did X, Y, and Z. All of those things could have associated with a negative karma. All of the times I demonstrated my unconditional love for something or someone, or done service for people, perhaps that could have been an element of minus or positive energy. And as I look back on my incarnation from that point in the spirit world, perhaps I have the equivalent of some spiritual scales. And I'm looking at my positive and I'm looking at my negative. And I'm thinking, did I do more or less what I wanted to do in that journey and experience? Did I make up for it? That time I was shouted at as a kid, did I kind of understand what that was like when I was then shouted at? When I took that candy from the child, did it bring me back to the time that I was a child and someone stole some candy from me? You can see I have the influence of children watching American YouTube to call sweets candy at the moment. But this idea of balancing the scales, it might be then that influenced my next choices. When we spoke about reincarnation, I described the opportunity of being up in the halls of learning and looking for all the records of the incarnations, the equivalent of my Blockbuster video store. And as I go in and I start looking for my next incarnation, my next journey, as I look for the DVD of my life that I'm going to live, understanding that some of the headlines will be there, perhaps I'm thinking, right, well, I want to do some of that was done to me. I want to experience what it was like, or the way that I was cared for when I was sick. I want to make sure that in my next life, I get to care for someone that was sick so I can pay that back. Perhaps, if I scored lots of goals in the football, I want to be the goalkeeper that has to save them. Whatever it be, it's that element of choice, the element of free will as a higher being, and that concept of reincarnating to go through that. Now, I introduced that as an assumption, but I'm also going to throw an additional element in, which is not everything that you're going to have in your life is available in the trailer of that life. Because as we've said, your memory is erased when you come and incarnate on this earth. And therefore, you cannot remember why it is you've come back. You're starting that journey from the point you left the map. You should feel inspired by your guides and advisors. And you should know that you have everything you need with you in order to overcome and adapt to any of the things thrown at you. But assuming that you've started back on the place you left on the map and you're still in pursuit of paradise and happiness, let's throw in that element of karma. That this time you're going to take a fast track. You took the scenic route, now you're looking for a faster experience, but that faster experience, you know what? It's going to be steady, upwards, rising trajectory in mountains all the way up, but it's going to be a faster route to get further in the map. Equally, we might decide that we've got some time. We want to walk along the pleasant route and see the scenery and experience things along the way and be one with nature, even if it means, like the snakes and ladders border of life, we end up going down a few snakes and go slightly back or slightly sideways, knowing, of course, that we can always return to the same point on the map. I'd now like to read just one other bit from Ralph's book. Talking about the word karma, we usually think in terms of experiencing something nasty, but it's equally true that we can have something good happen to us. When we're walking down the middle of the road and stray off that middle line, either to the right or the left, we are pulled back in the opposite direction. So there is good karma as well as bad karma. We will receive what we have given out to others, whether it is good or bad. Once more, if it's good, there is no question of reward. It's just a natural consequence of what we have done in the past. If, in physical terms, we have done something strenuous and are all hot and sweaty, after having had a bath or a shower, we feel nice and refreshed, not rewarded. And I wanted to finish with that bit from Ralph's book, because the final part that might inspire some of you to ask some really difficult questions that I might not have the answers to, but between us in the panel, I hope we will be that concept of why would you choose some of the horrific experiences that some of us go through on Earth? And I honestly believe that there is no way in my current human shell that I'm going to be able to explain why we would do that. But what I do allow is that element of assumption that my higher self is in a slightly different position where it can understand that. Perhaps it's seen the bigger picture of the map and it knows that this will be tough and it will be short-lived, but it will get me further down that map and further on that route and that journey in pursuit of happiness. And I won't have all the answers for all the bad things in the world, but I will use a caveat that says not everything is written into destiny. Sometimes bad and horrific things happen and they're as much a surprise to people in the spirit world as they are to people on earth. We have that confirmation, and as a spiritual medium whose job is to give life or proof of life after death, we hear that from communicators time and time again. If someone had a destiny to live a long and healthy life to the ripe age of 100, but they decide to constantly throw themselves in front of the bus, and they end up, because of their lifestyle, taking their own life, that doesn't mean it was destiny. Equally, the spanner I throw in the works is, maybe it was. So, as I finish with those thoughts and I talk about what karma could be, what I believe karma is, I do believe that reincarnation is possible. I do believe that just your higher self is going to judge you on all the things you've done, what we would describe as good and bad in our lives. And I do believe that you would choose to reincarnate, to experience different things. I've often explained to friends that I believe that the soul and the spirit is genderless. And actually the gender is attached to the physical body, the physical shell that we're walking on this journey. And sometimes I think for people, when I've come across things like homophobia, and I've tried to explain to them that people fall in love with people. The body is a physical shell and it's capable of reproduction, but the soul, the spirit, is capable of loving absolutely anyone and everything. Sometimes that leads to physical attraction. Sometimes that might be remnants or fingerprints of previous lives. But you know what? If you enjoyed things while you lived a previous life, why wouldn't you choose a life that you got to come back and do some of those things you enjoyed? For example, if you enjoyed walking by the water, why wouldn't you thread that into a life if you have the choice of destiny? Equally, if you think, I never really got to experience that, or I'd grown up in a world of a culture where I was kind of blinded and I was unable to focus on seeing the big picture, I would like to experience some of that to see what it's like. Then again, that's absolutely possible. So as I come towards the end of me setting out my concepts, I have great joy now in bringing in a couple of friends, talented people in their own fields that are going to talk about their concept or belief in karma. My mum and dad, who many of you will know are both ministers of religion at Wimbledon and Spiritualist Church, have agreed to help me out on my panel. My mum spoke previously about reincarnation, and I'd asked my dad about talking about karma. And at one point when it was looking like I wasn't going to finish work, my dad was happy to come on and talk about karma for about 30 seconds. He was going to say, and he doesn't believe it exists, and he was going to move on to something else. So everyone's entitled to their opinion. I bring you my humble opinion based on my inspirers and my guides. And I'm going to ask Ian and Birgitta to give you their opinions on it. We haven't rehearsed this. They might challenge absolutely everything I've said. They might challenge only some of it, but they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves, a little bit about their background, and a little bit about their concept and understanding of karma. And that will take us through to about 9 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock, I want you all to think about some questions. You can challenge anything we've said. You can agree with us. We love it when you agree with us. And you can ask us some questions about what we've said. So hopefully that's going to work well, folks. Thank you for listening to me attentively for this moment. And I think that, Ian, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah. Our producer's being very rude in our ears, ladies and gentlemen. But he's a little scam. Ash, wonderful. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here, parking my trailer on Ash's land this evening on his show. Okay, so I mean, here we go. I mean, we come at life from different sort of perspectives and thoughts and values, and you know what? It's okay. It's all okay. For me, I'm just going to rewind and come at where I start, and that is that we are a soul and we are eternal. And everything that Ash was talking about there about the physical body and the sexes and all that, completely share that. But the soul is the soul. And in this incarnation, what most people think is this physical form that you are right now, it is an incarnation of the soul that, for me and my beliefs, are where we come here to learn and become masters of ourself, our higher self, our self-mastery of the unlearned lessons that we haven't mastered before. Because as we go through what we call living is experiencing. And the different experiences that we get, we have a choice. We can choose our behaviors and actions as we move through those. And as we go through them, we can either make choices that are good for us or less good for us. Now, here's an example. Karma on a very, very basic level. Sometimes we have those days where we're a little bit impatient. We're in the car, perhaps. Of course, this never happened to me. And if it did, I was a less spiritual person in those days, of course. But you can imagine that you might overtake someone or get a little bit impatient and boot it down the road. You think you're in a hurry and you're determined to overtake all these cars. And then you're there at the traffic lights, your number one car, but the cars that you overtook and got yourself in a pickle over all catch up with you. But it's a lesson because you didn't actually achieve anything. And the question is what did that do for you? And the reality is if you observe the experiences that are going on within you, and if you observe and notice where that you feel that in either your chakras or the parts of your body, maybe your stomach, maybe your heart, you can feel how that stresses you, and that's a guide to show you what you need to master. And when people talk about designing your life, and you attract what you create for yourself, what you draw in, what you're being, isn't quite as clear cut as that for me. And you know what? I just want to say that the thing with karma is quite often a misunderstood concept, something that was touched on in Ralph's book and with what Ash was saying, because karma isn't how most people use it, which is I hope somebody else suffers because I don't like what I experienced as a result of my experience with that person or that situation or thing. And so we go, well, they'll get theirs because karma is the word rhymes with a ditch and begins with a B. And that's not karma. That's an unconscious reaction to an experience that you've had where you want to inflict a righteous retribution on somebody else. In other words, suffering. And they call that karma. That's not karma. That just means you've got some stuff to work out. So karma pretty much is literally like driving down the road and looking at the signposts for me. And the different experiences that we come across, we have the opportunity to choose our behaviors and actions. Because if we don't, if we wake up grumpy and we go through the day grumpy, as Ian Van Zandt says, our eyes adjust to the level of deficiency presence. And what happens is we'll get stuck. We won't be able to move beyond where we are in that day. And more importantly, we'll carry it on into another day. So how does that quite work with karma? Well, you're generating the experiences that you haven't yet mastered. You've not yet moved beyond it because you're not truly in alignment with what you are, who you are, which is Ash was quite rightly saying, and I share the view, is your higher self. Your unconsciousness of your physical incarnation, in this instance, Ian or Birgitta or Ash, chooses a course of actions, but they're not guided. We block it off. And so what I would say is a soul is energy, as we believe on the panel. I'm sure that's a common view between the three of us. But what I want to say is your vibrational energy, you can set the frequency of that by your choices, behaviors, and actions. And so the word Ashley used there, with the D word, destiny, it kind of does an impact on that for those reasons, because you bring in what you experience. Wherever you set the bar, you'll hit it. So always be aware of that. Now, in terms of what we're here to do, it's a really important thing to understand that karma is both positive and negative, something that Ash touched on there. But what's important is the frequency that we go through life with. Because, as I said, we're a soul, and Ian that you see before you now on the screen, the personality of that soul in this incarnation hasn't sorted his stuff out of some of the experiences that he's had. So here I am going through them, because in each moment, in the present moment, in the now with a capital N, I have the opportunity to do that. I have the opportunity to transcend it, move beyond it, transmute my pain and suffering to give me that lift, that ascension to move beyond where I am, so that I can experience new things. In other words, I raise my frequency. How do I do that? Well, you see, Ian here, if he makes a bad choice, he chooses unconsciousness. He chooses to do something, let's just call it dumb. Something that's less good for him, that won't yield him or bring him the things that he needs to nourish him. He chooses to suffer. So what I do there is I lower my frequency, because my vibrational energy isn't aligned and hasn't become at one with who I am, my higher self. Where when I'm at that frequency, I'm able to recognize the choices and behaviors and actions I can choose from the people, places, situations, and opportunities that are around me. In other words, the experiences that I can have so that I understand the better choices that I can make for myself. And so when I raise my vibration, I'm more aligned with who I am. And to some extent, I'm going to suggest that karma drops off in some way and on some level, because you're riding the crest of the wave rather than going through it. But understand this, that the experiences that come to you, sometimes people do bad stuff, but you do always have that choice about how you want to respond to it. And quite often, the circumstances that you've been conditioned by and with, and choose for yourself, at 49 years old, I can't blame my mum for some stuff that I know better of. My ego wants to do that because, hey, it's not my fault, but it's not realistic. And we often find that in our awakening, when we get to kind of maybe like 40, we've gone through a few life experiences, how we react to people passing, perhaps. And you know what? At this stage, as I'm sure the other panel members have, we've lost the physical of those that are dear to us, and some experiences that are less than pleasant for us through maybe relationship breakups, or whether they are at work or personal to us, and all of those things. But they do leave an energetic imprint on us. But it doesn't mean that we have to suffer through it. We have to work out what that does for us. But karma isn't here. That experience isn't here in that instance to keep us suffering. Karma is the opportunity for us to understand that had a purpose, and that actually it teaches us something. To recognize that, so that we don't, every time we have an experience that we call less than pleasant for us, kind of, just sort of drop our energy and decide that we can't go on. That's not what karma is. So that we blame that situation for where we are. It shows us the opportunity that we can be grateful for what we've had so that we can move above it. And that's the beautiful thing about karma. It's very multifaceted, it's multidimensional even. And as multisensory beings, we can experience that in many, many ways. So, when you are out of kilter with something, it's very much about realigning yourself with where you are so that you don't get stuck. Because what karma does for me in this instance is it kind of holds you prisoner. You kind of put yourself in jail, but yet you're the jailer that keeps yourself there. And you can always choose something better for yourself. Because, we do blame everything. And it's such a shame. It's just a shame, we're not already dead. We're here to get those experiences. So karma in a negative, if you choose that to be your experience, can literally hold you where you are. And then you attach yourself to the mental idol that you create. And you don't move forward from it, even though your life is continually passing you by, bringing you new experiences. And for me, that's a really important point to learn there. And I love the white line thing on the road, because when you are at a higher vibrational energetic frequency, you don't really tend to sort of look around as to who's kind of beside you. You don't sort of want to look around as to who's behind you. You don't kind of want to take notice of where you are. And karma on some level, for me, diminishes because you are just riding the crest of the wave. You're very much in the present moment in the experience and less distracted by that. And for me, that's quite powerful. And when you do that, you just keep going. And that's when you know that you're more energetically aligned with who you are. And on some way, and on some level, that karma is a distraction. It's a guide. It's a bit like tradition, recognize it, understand it, but don't be a slave to it, so that you continue to move. And it's really important, because the personality that you are from the incarnation from your soul has something very unique. We all worry about what we look like sometimes in our clothes, that old cliche of, does my bum look too big in this? Most people turn around and say, no, he looks fine, leave him alone. That's a little joke there for you, if you got that. If you didn't, you'll get it later. But you know what? If you go through life like that, you're on a very different pathway, because you're not contributing what you're here to do, that uniqueness that you are. You were born with everything. My hair was always going to fall out at a certain point. I was yay tall with brown eyes and all that. I don't need to worry about it. And so therefore, I don't need to worry about where everybody else is and what they're doing to me. I just need to live fully, making my contribution. So for me, karma can be a distraction away from who you are. And that takes away the beauty and the magic of what you were incarnated to produce into this world, but for how you choose to go through it with the experiences that you get. So you've got to rock it. You've got to crush it. You've got to be out there. My saying is keep evolving, not revolving. And don't let anything hold you back. Wayne Dyer had that lovely saying, don't die with your music still in you. You've got to make that contribution. You'll feel restless because that white line in the road is that thing that says to you, this doesn't feel quite right for you. What's that? What's that all about? And it's almost that obligation that we have sometimes to say, but I was told this is what I have to do, or I have to be like that, and I don't like that. Well, that's kind of karma too. It's pulling us off path, off of who we are, and that's why we don't feel comfortable with it. And so that pull back into the center of the road is really, really important. It's a bit like when you come out to a junction in the car and it's a T junction, you can only go left or right, and you say, I think I want to go left. I really feel like I need to go left, but I'm going to go right. That's where you override it and it all goes a bit topsy-turvy. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that life is absolutely peachy if you take that left turn, but you might just find the experiences there are a little bit better for you. And as you go down that road, that self-mastery is, riding that crest of the wave and not getting stuck in what the situations are. Karma brings us many things that if we see others who choose a path that is less beneficial for them or less good or brings them suffering, we don't have to go down that road. It's actually a gift to us to say, you've observed it, you haven't attached to it, keep going. And if we see the suffering of others, equally what karma shows us is the opportunity to send our prayers and blessings to those people to help them. But you know what that does? That adds to the magic of who we are, so that as we continue on our journey, we can use that for our learning as well. And actually, I would suggest that if we could dissolve karma, and I'm not suggesting that we should ignore it, we should be aware of it. We just might be a little bit more free to allow ourselves to be who we are, so that as our vibrational energy becomes and aligns with whatever you want to call this divine source pulls us to do, that we feel free enough of ourselves to make the right choices, behaviors, and actions that allow us to have the courage to see the doors of opportunity that are not only here before us that are ajar, but never forget your free will in all of this, because you have to have the courage to follow the pull that you feel that you know is for you, not what you think is for you, what you know is for you. And then we have to have the faith to go with it, because we don't know what's on the other side of the door. And that will bring different experiences. And I would just like to finish on, you know what? You don't know what you don't yet know. So you have to go through these experiences to learn, to expand. Because whatever you go through, everybody that's around you is watching you and they're learning from you. And what doesn't work out as well for you as it might do, as I said on your journey a moment ago, they can use to help others. And the beauty of it all is by all those experiences that we observe, that we notice, with everything that's around us, we can learn and use that to help each other, so that we can all get better together for the good and greater for everyone, so that we can fulfill what we came here to do and share that with others. And at that point now, I'd love to hand over to my lovely, lovely friend, the wonderful Birgitta Visser.
Well, thank you so much, Ian, for your thoughts on that. And they say that, two adds some context, but the power of free is what we're aiming for today. So yes, absolutely. Birgitta, we would love to hear a little bit about you, some of your own thoughts, and any challenges on anything Ian and I got wrong.
So, hi, I'm Birgitta, and I'm a divine channel and a healer. Now, I'm going to explain to you what a divine channel is, because some people get confused. Some people think I channel those that have crossed over, but it's more that I channel the light beings, from the different dimensions, the intergalactics, the ascended masters, and the angels. So that's a little bit different. And I started my healing journey, gosh, I think over 10 years ago. So I've been doing this for quite a while, but I started channeling about 3 years ago, and I call myself a scribe. So I'm just somebody that, I write very inspirational content, and it's like I'm planting a seed, and it gives people food for thought, really. So that's a little bit about me. I loved what you were saying, Ash, and Ian as well. And it's really funny because it really adds to each other. So I come in from a little bit of a different aspect, whilst I really agree with both of you. But do you remember the song, Welcome to the Karma Hotel? Looks like heaven, but it could be hell. I can't sing. But, I think that was the Spooks. But wouldn't it be so much easier? Wouldn't life be so much simpler if we all just arrived with a small book around our necks, and, a challenge or a problem would arise, we could just consult that little book and say, aha, and it'd be like our little guide. But unfortunately, that does not happen. So last week I was saying, that we are actually part of the whole, and our actions affect every single creature throughout the universes. We are this big conscious tapestry of energetic frequency, and for example, the example that I gave last week was, when a polar bear sneezes in the Arctic, a grain of sand moves in the Sahara. See, that is how we are also intertwined. Now, when we talk about karma, it's like, it's a spiritual working. It's like a spiritual working out for all things, and it can take many lifetimes. It's not just that we do it in this lifetime. So your thoughts, your words and actions, they're all energies that come back to you in the exact same measure that you give it out. So ultimately the saying is, as you give, so shall you receive. And I call karma a little bit of the boomerang effect, because what happens when you throw a boomerang, it will come back to you. So whatever you throw out there, if it's something bad, it will eventually come back to you. It is really the principle of cause and effect. And here's one for you. If you get really stuck, I could have done it at the end, but Archangel Metatron, he really can help you to release and erase any burdens or negative karma, because the remorse, the guilt, and the shame that you are carrying lowers your vibration. And, cause and effect operate throughout the whole of creation. So every action causes a reaction, and every thought does that too. But I want to go a little bit further. And Ash was talking about the video store, which is the Akashic Records, actually. And so what happens is, once you're free from the body, your soul goes back to the higher planes. And you go through this life review. And you can say, well, I could have done that better, or I could have done that better, And so it goes by really quickly, and you see this movie of your life. And it's like each lifetime, when you want to incarnate again, whether that's on Earth or somewhere else, you decide with the council if you want to be like a boy or a girl, because as Ash said, your spirit is genderless, and I totally agree with that. And you sit there with the council and you're like, yeah, well, I want to be with that group of people, and I would like to be born to these parents, and I'd like to be living there because I want to learn these and these lessons. And then you go and you're like, oh man, I'm really going to do great. Okay. And then whoa, what happens? You come in cold and you've forgotten everything, because what happens is you need to navigate you need to navigate through the earthly plane. So, wherever you're from, you're subject to laws, the environment, national and world conditions, and many, many other factors that can impose restrictions on the full expression of free will. So really, you've forgotten everything, and you need to navigate through your earthly life. But that is the challenge that we take when we incarnate, to express yourself within the confines of physical life. So, and sometimes we have to live for decades before we understand karma. It's really about looking for answers and guidance, both within and without yourselves. So I would say, you know what, if you're really stuck in a rut and you're like a dog chasing its tail, call Ian or Ash, because they'll be able to help you out, able to help you move forward. Because sometimes we get really stuck and we don't know how to move forward, and we don't understand the karma thereof. And so, yeah, and also what I think has helped me, but that's, from my view, is regression therapy. And it's not for everyone, but it does understand, it made me understand that, well, I was stuck in certain aspects of my life and I couldn't figure it out. And I had all these players around me, all the other people around me, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I did regression therapy, and I found out that, for instance, I lived in the Byzantium Empire, and I died in prison because of my beliefs. And so in another lifetime, somebody in this lifetime treated me bad, but then in another lifetime, it was the same thing. And I was actually killed with rat poison, and the person, took everything from me. But then in this lifetime, I carried that imprint. And so the imprint was that I got really, really ill to my stomach, and I lost so much weight. And this is quite a few years ago. And I couldn't figure it out until that was released. But what happens when that was released is that you yourself change, because your energetic frequency changes. You become aware. So your consciousness that elevates, because you have a deeper understanding thereof. And what happens to the other person is they also change their frequency, their vibration. And, it's like you're free. There is something that, because I like I said, I channel, and I channel Ashtar quite a lot, commander of the galaxies, or the Federation of Light. And he always tells me, look from above. Because when you are in a situation, he's like, look from above, from above the earth. Because that's when you see everything from a bird's eye view. And it's just like, why do I make, what's the saying? I know the saying is in Dutch, but why do you make an elephant out of a mosquito? And it's actually true. But when we're in the middle of it, it makes it so difficult. The other thing is that, we live in this age of duality right now. We're shifting, but we're still in the third dimensional frequency. So we live in this age of duality. And when you understand duality, light versus darkness, everything is contrasting, everything is opposites. Suddenly you'll understand is, it's by trying to be in the light and ignoring the darkness. For me, I was avoiding the lessons, the jewels that actually duality, the shadow sides, were presenting to me. And many a time, it was actually an excuse to avoid the lessons. And I really had to learn. And the thing is, I call myself a donkey sometimes, because I had to learn the lessons over and over again. We can't get it right the first time. And the thing is, with life, negative emotions will always continue to pop up. And it's never simple, And that's why I said, that's why I've been a donkey many times, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But the thing is with duality is like you must embrace it. If you're ever going to make any real progress. So the answer actually for me is not to try and be in the light all the time, but to embrace your personal darkness and then infuse it with light. Every experience that is thrown onto us, we have a choice, as Ian was saying, whether we want to go left or right. And that is entirely up to you. It's not set in stone. So duality actually has a purpose to get you to see your karma. And actually at this point in the development of human consciousness, it's possible to simply look behind the negative emotion and transform it, and transcend it. It is actually really easy if you know how to do it, if you are more aware. But for me, it took me years. It really took me years. And I did all these self-help programs. And, I did a lot of healing modalities. And I learned to trust my inner gut, my own awareness. And so it's really about using the power of your own consciousness, your power of thoughts and intent to quickly move past the karma. So, yeah. And let's face it, the masters who came down to the planet were actually really, really important. If we talk about, people like Buddha, like Krishna, even Jesus Christ, they came to Earth actually to start a really powerful vibration of love in human consciousness. And then if enough people pick up on that and apply it, that morphogenic field of love becomes more and more powerful. And only a relatively small handful of people have to do this for the human race to begin advancing, because hate is just a lower harmonic of love and is subsumed within it. But it's really hard sometimes for us to make these decisions as a species, and that's why it takes us longer to advance, because it's almost impossible to find love in a vibe that supports, indifference, hatred. But again, that's duality. So if we didn't understand hate, we would never understand love. But I think in this situation, I think we live in very, very interesting times, and more people are awakening and starting to understand that in order to move forward in their lives, it's really about healing their own pain and moving past the karma and learning these lessons. And it doesn't take anything to be kind and compassionate and loving and embracing one another. It's just we live in this, as I said, the third dimensional frequency of fear and intolerance and materialism. So there is also a saying, I really, really like that, from Walt Kelly. He said, "We have met the enemy and he is us." And that really describes the wheel of karma. One time, in one lifetime, you may be a good person. In the next lifetime, you are not the best. And that is okay, because karma continues, because we haven't yet learned the lesson. And actually, the lesson is when we do exercise tolerance and compassion, when we do, we just learn so much more. And I'll finish off with one saying. Jesus always said, "Turn the other cheek." And I actually really get that, because there is no other solution than tolerance, love, compassion, and acceptance of one another. Is that really so hard? We always blame, and as Ian said, it's always a blame game. And it shouldn't be. Look within, because the lessons will repeat over and over and over and over on the broader scale. And the wheel of karma will continue, and you'll still be on it. You'll be like this hamster on a treadmill, you know? And you cannot solve problems with the same consciousness that caused them. So, just remember that. So
Absolutely.
I think I'm just going to leave that at that.
No, thank you, Brigitte. Nice note to finish on. And absolutely, if you don't learn from history, you may be doomed to repeat it. Now, in a couple of the previous shows, when we were talking about our spiritual guides, I introduced that concept that for a guide to dedicate themselves to service as your principal guide for your entire life, and bearing in mind your life might be 100 years, was an incredible thing to do. But why wouldn't you? Because one way of showing that unconditional love is through service to others. And I want to bring that up because we spoke a little bit about potentially working karma off or gaining karma, both positive and negative. And I want to plant that seed that we've said that, and I think the panel have agreed, and last week they did, reincarnation is possible. You only live this life once. Make it the best possible life. Experience everything you can. Do things that make you happy. Find people that make you happy and show that love. But we also introduced this concept of incarnation, not just for you, but for someone else. We spoke about the concepts of soul groups. And perhaps you're not here to work off your karma. Perhaps you're quite simply doing service for a friend. Because if your best friend rang you up right now and asked you to do a favor for them, you're very likely to do it if it's reasonable and you can do it. So heaven side and spirit side, if someone says, I really want to go down to earth and I need to experience this, or I want to experience this, will you come down with me and be part of that experiment? Will you help me experience it? And I think it, for me, may explain, while that love-hate, the power behind that, it might also explain sometimes why it's so hard to get over situations, and particularly people that have hurt us. And when I asked Ralph Stedman about this, Ralph said to me that, one of the easiest ways of getting over people, the first very powerful thing, is to forgive that person. And once you're able to forgive them, you'll start to forgive the situation, you'll start to get over it. But it's only when you can thank that person for that experience will you truly be able to get beyond it, to overcome and adapt of all the things that might come up life. So I wanted to just throw that seed in as well. You've heard some really lovely thoughts from Brigitte. She's introduced a few other subjects which we can always go back to in other shows. Ian has spoke about his role as a way guide. I think I've described that right, Ian. And how we can get to that best possible version of ourselves, back towards that white light. And now what I want to do is I want to open this up to some questions. So we're encouraging you to let us know what you thought of the show so far, assuming that there is still a few of you knocking about and paying attention. Let us know what you thought of that. Let us know if you agree with us, or if you don't agree with us, why. And we're really interested to get your questions. So Leslie says, if we choose to incarnate, do we choose another life, or is it chosen for us? So I'd like to start with asking by that, but I think that's a good one for both Brigitte and Ian to answer as well. So Leslie, I think that yes, there is the opportunity to choose to reincarnate, and yes, to a certain extent, in the blockbuster DVD of the Acacia Records, there's an opportunity to choose elements of the life we're planning to live. I think some of the things are programmable. We know that biologically we need a man and a woman to create a baby, so you need to find and locate parents. You can choose where in the world those parents would be. From spirit side, you'd be able to understand the type of lifestyle they have. Do they own their own house and car? Is food something they don't struggle for, or the absolute end? You'd be able to choose the temperature and the climate of the conditions, and you'd get a rough idea of the types of things you experience. So I do agree that it is possible to choose that, but I also think there's an element of chaos. And that chaos theory for me suggests that at other times people might pull us with us, and they might say, well, if I'm going down there and I'm going to be part of that experiment on Earth, you're coming with me and I'm going to drag you with you, and it's all about me, and we can discuss it and debrief it afterwards at a very higher self level. perhaps there's an opportunity where your higher self says, well, that's that incarnation, that personality of Leslie Knight that has lived that life, because of what's happened in that life, that personality and soul is going to go back and incarnate as part of a greater spirit. So yeah, I've kind of answered that almost like a politician. But Birgitta, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Actually, there's a really good book. It's written by Claire Candy Ho, and it's called One True Home Behind the Veil of Forgetfulness. And yeah, you choose, you sit with the council and you actually, you discuss what you would like to do, if you would like to be boy, girl, or I mean, your gender, female or male, what settings you're going to be born in, the parents, the country. So it really, really is your choice. And then you decide with them what lessons, what experiences you would like to have. Okay. So yeah.
What was the name of that book again, Birgitta?
It's called One True Home.
One True.
Behind the Veil of Forgetfulness, and it's by Claire Candy Ho. And what she does is she talks about, she's actually an angelic walk-in. That's her second book. She's really amazing because I interviewed her like 2 years ago. And she talks about her various lives on the earth plane, and why she chose these lives. And they weren't all pretty. I think one of them, I can't remember, she was drowned or I think burned at the stake as a witch. But these are the experiences she chose. And, we all choose these experiences because we want to grow. We want to evolve.
That's great. Thank you, Birgitta. Ian, any thoughts on anything that Birgitta and I said, or in answer to the question?
Yes, I'd just like to add on another dimension, if I may, to that, guys. And I mean, Leslie, I don't thank you for asking such an awkward question, but it's such a brilliant question. It's such a fabulous question. And just sitting here with it, I'm going to go back to where I started when I was sharing my thoughts earlier. And that is, as a soul, we are eternal. And as a soul, we know what living experiences that we need to go through, and more importantly, grow through. Because otherwise we don't have the opportunity to transmute any pain and suffering so that we can transcend and ascend. So our soul knows what we need. And for me, the Paul that we talked about earlier, that Ash first mentioned with Ralph and the white line in the road, I feel our soul knows where we kind of need to go. And therefore, the opportunity of the experiences is where we'll find ourselves to master what we need to learn to move through that. So I don't come from the free will point of view. I feel it's a pull that we know we need to do, and this we can almost energetically as a soul identify what will give us that best experiences. So, for example, and I love the concepts that Birgitta, lovely, kindly shared with us there, that if there's a mobility issue that's come back from a past life there, that we were held captive or we weren't free, maybe we'll come back and have a free experience this time, or in the reverse, perhaps we will be differently abled in terms of our physical ability to move around, and we won't have that opportunity. But the important thing that I love with all of this is that we need to grow through everything. So as Ash said, that Ralph talked about forgiveness there, my saying is forgiveness is the key to the door that allows love to enter your house. But you have to be able to leave each situation peacefully so that you can be free of it. We can muck about with the frozen thing of let it go, but you have to let it go to let it grow. So it's really, really important. Otherwise, you're in constant opposition to the opportunity that's here to help you grow. So for me, it's kind of like a done deal. You know where you need to go, and you either see that as the opportunity or the opposition. And I hope that adds another dimension to what Ash and Birgitta shared there.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ian, and lovely question, Leslie. Leslie is a wonderful spiritual healer and teacher. She runs our spiritual academy for spiritual healing and counselling down at Wimbledon. So, you know, perhaps my grandfather chose for you to live that life to provide that service at Wimbledon, Leslie. But thank you for the question. Hopefully we have a couple of other questions. Leslie says she thinks that she believes we're definitely guided to another life to learn lessons and progress. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that too.
Yeah.
We have any other questions that have come in, Richard? Lovely. So Victoria says, are people we meet relevant from our previous lives, such as friends and partners? I mean, based on that Blockbuster Video concept, I think so. And based on that moment I said about choosing to do things, soul contracts, and I think that we spoke about the spirit almost being genderless. And I think if that one love really exists, then why wouldn't you choose to experience that love in different ways? Perhaps someone that is your wife in one life becomes your husband in another life, or becomes your child. If you were a child, you become a parent. So I do believe that it's possible, and I think that to a certain extent you can travel as a group of souls and spirits at the same time. Equally, if you found everyone miserable and you didn't like them, I think you can probably choose to change groups or swap out. So, Brigitte, anything you would like to say on that?
No, I do agree. I do agree. You know, but sometimes we, in our soul contract, we, like I said, we want to have experiences that are not the most pleasant. So we have these people in front of us that bring out either the worst in us, or we go through traumatic experiences. But the beauty of that is the challenge thereof. And this is how you grow. This is how you evolve. So yes, you know, and I know in other lifetimes, people have been, you know, like a husband to me, or they could have been a brother to me. And now the dynamics have changed. But as Spirit always say, you're like an actor, and you're in this play, and you know, you take on the role that's been given to you, and you make the most out of it to evolve.
Yeah, lovely. I love that idea of being in the play. Ian, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just briefly, I would say, Victoria, that from my feeling and how I'm guided with this, the people that come in, bearing in mind I said that earlier on that we chose with Leslie's question, the opportunity that best gives us the experiences that we need to learn, that the people that are around us or that we feel connected or drawn to, and that can even go back to what Brigitte talked about there about the past life stuff, are actually reminders of where we are, or conversely, where we're not, in terms of whether we're still groaning through our experiences, or whether we're either growing them or we've outgrown them, in terms of that being transmuting the pain and the suffering so that we can ascend. So if you find yourself in a situation where you keep having the same thing going on and on and on, and you've got the same people are around you, or there's always difficult people there, there's a little saying that it says projection is a mirror, not a fact. And so therefore I would suggest that's stronger than a reminder. It's more of an alarm that's ringing off inside there, saying you really need to choose differently for yourself. Otherwise, if you like, with karma, that will also keep you in that living experience until you're able to move beyond it.
Okay, great. I saw a comment on there, Richard. I'm hoping you could bring up from Marcus when I was looking at the comments. Okay, just because I was drawn to that. Ralph Steadman, I've quoted a few times today, doing his bit. I think they've got broadband in heaven now, so they can check out things as well. So I wanted to answer that question because Ralph has guided me. But Leslie gives some confirmation there. She was told, stands Brigitte, she was told by the hospital Dad was going to pass, so she went to sit with him. He lasted the night and told me in the morning that he watched a video of all the bad things he'd done in his life. So yeah, it goes back to that concept of the play and sitting in front of a chair. No, very nice. So the question we'll hopefully bring it up on the screen in a moment from Marcus. There was another one similar about someone, I think it was Denise, who said she didn't want to sound miserable, but why would she have chosen this life? I think we answered sort of Denise's question by saying perhaps you didn't choose it, perhaps someone asked you to come down with them, you were working off that for someone else. Or actually that you just haven't been able to get back to that white line yet, or you've gone off on a bit of adventure. But what Marcus was saying was in a similar way about, I suppose the opposite of that was, why would you choose material things, like your house and well-off parents, if you're required to work off karma? Now let's go back to Newman, and if Newman was actually going to do his first incarnation on Earth, and I imagine myself in the DVD shop thinking about all the experiences I can have as a human being, I would probably think, well, that looks like a lot of fun. That looks like it's going to be quite easy and quite fun. I'm not going to work too hard. But perhaps Newman chooses those things in a first life, and then he comes back and he thinks, well, it was great to grow up in a house with all these servants around me doing all these things for me. But now I look back at my life, I realize that I kind of exploited those people, and they were doing all those things to me, and they weren't really living their best possible life. So perhaps I'd go back and I'll be a servant in a house like that to experience it, to see what it was like. So I think the material things goes back down to our own individual growth and what it is we value. Equally, I think that if you're someone that's going to experience perhaps not just hundreds, but perhaps thousands of lives, why wouldn't you use them almost in the same way we use a holiday? So you think, right, I've done the last 100 years in service. I think I'm going to have a little holiday. I'm going to go and spend a life where I get to, spend a lot more time in a spa, and I don't have to work physically hard for a moment. And while I might jest and add a bit of humour to that, I believe that almost anything is possible, and that time doesn't really work in the same way that it does for us. Ian, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's another great question, Marcus. And by the way, loved your show the other night. I mean, for me, as I say, it's about our choices, behaviors, and actions. And perhaps on a higher plane, on a soul level, we need the experience of either with or without. And so, therefore, having material things is a valuable lesson for us, as equally it is not to have them. So perhaps it isn't a choice, and it's an experience that we need as part of our journey to master a particular situation that we're faced with. But equally, there's a fine line here that if you are coming from an unconscious perspective, in other words, your ego, and you're just bloody minded that you're going to kind of do something for the sheer, forgive the language now, hell of it, and knowing that it isn't going to yield you the best set of experiences to move through it and beyond it, there's not an excuse to give yourself permission to be irresponsible there. But you do need all experiences so that you can master yourself. So that's my contribution. Hello?
Yep.
Gita, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with both of you, really. It just depends. It depends. Even if you have material things, if you if you choose to be born in that aspect, there is nothing wrong with that. It just depends how you choose to evolve in your life. Are you going to live it very superficially, or are you going to do something with it? I mean, there's always that choice. You want to go left, you want to go right. What are you going to do?
Yeah, but it's all experience, isn't it?
It is. And, I just want to come back on Denise's comment.
to react to them. You know, it's about responding. How we choose that response. That we don't kind of get stuck to not. It's because we seldom are free enough of our own mind to see it as it is. We want to kind of make it into the story of what we either want it to be or how we see it. But maybe Ash has got something else to add back into that as well. If we have an Ash.
Ash went off somewhere magical, not quite heaven, but certainly nowhere internet. So I'm back, but no, I was agreeing. I was suddenly looking as well. So you know, answers to good questions.
Okay.
Oh, can I just add something to that? There's one thing that I forgot to add to that, and that is, you know, we are all mirror reflections of one another. So if somebody attacks you and says you are whatever, whatever, and has a go at you, just, you know, stay calm and centered. But we don't, because we judge so quickly, and, you know, we go and attack. But remember this. It says more about the person and how they feel about themselves than it does about you. So for you, it's just to remain centered and focused, you know, and just be aware of your reactions.
Nice. Yeah, very nice. Uplifting. Losing my video.
We've lost our leader. He's faded out. And he's left us
hopefully you can still hear me and still participating in the show.
Well, we can. We can hear him. But you know what? Maybe this is karma. Maybe Birgitta and I have done some dastardly act upon Ash's good nature there in the past, and now he's bunked off and put us right in it. Bless him. So this is live. This is a great thing with live stuff, ladies and gentlemen. This is karma playing out right before you. Ash, come back, because whatever I did, if in fact I did, I'm very sorry.
Good question.
That is a choice.
Yeah, please to start.
Yeah, that Stacey, and that is a choice. As I said earlier, you know, before we come down, before we are born, before we reincarnate, we sit down with the council, and so we say, you know, these are the people we want to reincarnate with, and we have all these different roles now. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for me, you know, just because that's how you start a journey in a certain set of circumstances, it doesn't mean that you have to stay there, because, you know, often we find that an experience serves us no longer. And that can be a job, it can be a relationship. Now, I'm not advocating that we don't stick with relationships, don't go going all crazy on the comments there. But, you know, we sometimes know that we've completed a journey together. I mean, I remember going into the Thai boxing gym one day. I had my new gloves. I was all ready for a tear up. And I walked through the door. I just panned around the room like this. And I went, I don't know what it is, but I'm done. I never went back. But the trick is, don't question it. Go with it. So hopefully that kind of adds on to what Birgitta's saying there. Just having that courage to go, okay, the pull is not to be here. I got that.
Yeah, I wonder if it wasn't a type of mistake, and actually the question was about incarnating with a sane group of people and why you would. But you know, the dyslexic in me thinks there's an answer to both of those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have any other questions, Richard?
Can't read it.
Yeah. So hopefully those at home can see Terry's question there. And I think that we've kind of answered this without answering this sort of question directly, but our reactions, and certainly our reaction to situations, is what we are in control of. So it goes back to that very thing of free will, how we choose to react to a situation, or how we choose not to react to a situation. Ultimately, our egos is kind of really important in this. Our ego helps us get out of bed in the morning. Our ego can affect our attitude, which can affect our behavior, which affects someone else's attitude and affects their behavior. We can choose to continue with that cycle, or we can interject at any time and influence their attitude and behavior. But I do think that ultimately we were equipped with everything we need to get on the next part of our journey. Birgitta or Ian, what do you think?
I think that we are all everything. We are energy in motion. Okay, we are energetic frequencies. We are made out of light particles. We are energetic consciousness. So that's one of the reasons. I mean, when we talk about natural emotions of anger, everything has a consequence, and people get angry. They have all these layers within them, and that's a different aspect. But if we get really angry or annoyed or anything, you really have to be careful, because we can cause within our bodies, because we're made of energetic frequency.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I mean, there's a lovely saying from Maya Angelou, follows on quite nicely with that. When people show you who they are, believe them, because they're showing you what their stuff is. In fact, they're actually saying, I'm going through this, and clearly this is a current experience for me in the present moment. And you can't help everybody, but it is a cry for help. Whether people are prepared to be conscious enough to receive what comes to them to be able to move them forward or not, that's a free will. So I would always say that there's a difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction, if you're triggered, allows you to go into your mind, get out with your ego, get attached to what you think's going on. You know, you push me, so I'm going to shove you back twice as hard. Well, that's just up in a bit of a mess at some point, and nobody wins and grows from that. But a response is from a higher level of consciousness, where you can just go, as like my daughter said, you can just go, okay, I got that. And you can either do, as the Jesus Christ saying was, you know, you can turn the other cheek, quite literally, if you're not able to help them or move beyond them or contribute to, if people are open to receive it, or not, as the case may be. But if there isn't anything else you can do, then you turn the other cheek, because you don't need to react to it. There's nothing that you can actually contribute if somebody isn't willing to listen, isn't receptive. But it's about, okay, it's just an experience that you've had, and you can just go, okay, I got that. Where and how can I contribute to this being better for us all, for the good and great of everyone, if you like? And if the answer is no, sometimes you've got to go, okay, you know, send love and light, or whatever it is for you. For me, when I get that in my mind to bring peace, I go, goodbye, God bless, good luck, and I move on.
Yeah, that's great, and a nice point to finish on. Believe it or not, folks, we've come towards the end of time. I'm sorry that my video is still not transmitting by all accounts, Richard. Apologies to you and those at home. Yeah, very, very bizarre. But it's been a really great opportunity to engage with you all tonight. I'm absolutely delighted to have had my friends on the show, Mr. Ian Mason, Miss Birgitta Visser. Really grateful to have had you here. I know that we didn't get to answer all of your questions, folks, so do engage with us. That's Birgitta's handle there, at Birgitta Visser. You can find Ian Mason as well on Facebook, and of course me on Facebook too. I'll go back later and I'll try and see if I can see some of the other comments in the feed. But we're going to be back in 2 weeks' time talking about mediumship. My dad is going to join us on the panel in 2 weeks' time, and we're going to talk about sort of like brief history of spiritualism, mediumship, that's gone the direction it's going and needs to continue to go. Mediumship in some respect is still a bit of a Victorian parlour trick, and how they developed the posh tappings and knockings of the Fox sisters, and that intelligent evidence of life after death. So we're going to talk about mediumship in a couple of weeks' time. I'd like to all join me by saying thank you to Richard in the studio for hosting us, Brigitte Visser and Ian Mason. And then Ian and Brigitte will be on Spiritual Productions TV doing a rise of different things. I think you've got the Ian Mason show. Ian, you'll have to remind us when that is ordinarily airing.
That's actually this coming Monday at noon. So 12 p.m. And we run that fortnightly. So the next one will be in a couple of weeks' time, which frighteningly probably takes us into August, which sounds a bit scary, doesn't it? Oh my goodness! but yeah, I swear they're all ready. Oh my goodness! But so that's my show.
That's good. And Brigitte, this time next week, the origins of the ancients.
Yes. I will let you know what it's going to be about. But I'm not sure yet. I have plenty of topics, so I will know this weekend.
Lovely. And you're lucky that Richard works really hard behind the scenes to offer us all a fantastic variety of different things. And you're bound to find at least one person you enjoy, and you'll probably be lucky enough to find dozens of people offering you all sorts of different things, from truths and philosophy of spiritualism to knowledge and shared knowledge of life after death, including elements of psychic and tarot and other bits and pieces. One of my favourite things, I'm very biased, is the Divine Service on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock from Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. They opened their doors for the first time in South London last week, for the first time since lockdown had started. They'll be going live from Wimbledon and streaming across hyperspace with my mum and dad, Reverend Ray and Jackie Robinson, and the very talented medium, Ivan Lee. So you're in for a real treat Sunday morning from 11 o'clock for that. So do check out the Divine Service if you're able to, and have a look through the catalogue of different shows that Richard has. The Sunday Sofa is always another uplifting experience, includes some free live readings. That's Sunday afternoon from 2:30. Tomorrow night, our mutual friend Bill Hughes, another fantastic demonstrator. We on the panel all know him very well. Great medium. That's Saturday the 18th of July from 8 o'clock, the demonstration of mediumship. That will be another must watch show. And then Sunday evening, In Search of the Paranormal, Ghost Society. It's a fortnightly show all about the paranormal. It's Sunday nights from 8 o'clock. So that's another opportunity. And we've got a special celebrity guest, say Phoenix. Wicked Felix. Okay, so that will be something quite fantastic to check out as well. Very sorry that I've had a couple of technical issues and problems today. I've got more of a face for radio than a face for Skype anyway, Richard. So one of your meditation videos will no doubt work very well. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been brilliant to be with you. Thank you for listening into our show and engaging with us. God bless. Take care. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.